the videos from today, also my deck from this morning that has all of all of the quotes that I collected from a lot of you, and also some of the recent pieces that I pulled from Mary Meeker's deck will be available back at the website on the agenda. If you go back, you'll see them listed there, probably later today or early tomorrow morning, but I'll let you know tomorrow when they're posted. We're going to have a section of content now talking about direct consumer revenue. And we're going to start with a short presentation that will precede the panel, in which we'll drill more deeply into both product development for direct-to-consumer revenue across a number of different categories, as well as subscription fatigue, which I think we've already seen is starting to set in. But we're going to start with talking about product development, which is a category that publishers, a term that you didn't hear around publishing until really the last few years. This notion of creating discrete new product types that could draw new revenue streams from consumers. To talk about the ways in which Trusted Media is starting to look at this and the idea of product development, we have Stephanie Lombardi-Wernicken, who's the Director of New Digital Products at Trusted Media Brands. For those of you who haven't kept up, Trusted Media is that group that has, of course, Reader's Digest, as well as Taste of Home, Family Handyman, a number of different products, including things across with membership services, as well as online learning, which she's going to tell us about. She was brought on a couple of years ago to do exactly this at Trusted Media Brands, start developing more direct lines, more product types that could find new revenue streams among consumers. Please welcome Stephanie.
I was going to introduce myself, but that was perfect. It's exactly what I do, so we can just jump into it. Being customer first is essential. We all know this, but what does that really mean? In part, it means learning customers' problems and helping to develop solutions for those problems. That can be as complicated as launching a multi-channel membership program, which is complicated. Or it can be as simple as repurposing content as downloadable PDFs, and I did just say PDFs. When creating customer-first product, it does help to work with brands that have a long history of taking a customer-centric approach. I get to work with Trusted Media Brands, which has a massive community of doers with brands like Family Handyman, Taste of Home, and Reader's Digest. And so I joined Trusted Media Brands in late 2016 as the first member of a small, agile, scrappy entrepreneurial group called the New Digital Products team. We focus mostly on consumer products. And the primary project at the time was online learning, which was really struggling to find its legs. Today, our team develops, manages, and when I say manage, I mean both technical product management and consumer product management, and markets direct consumer product. And so some of these products that we market that I'll be talking about is online learning, like familyhandyman.com, where people can take online classes and workshops in home repair and renovation. It are membership programs like the Family Handyman Insider, because everyone loves the word insider, and on-site shopping experiences like downloadable projects at familyhandyman.com, as well as a soon-to-come branded Taste of Home cookware. Oops, back. There we go. So we've come a long way and learned a lot, often through mistakes. And so now we follow four pillars of and pillar seems to be the word today. 4 pillars of product development. The first is test small. Make it low risk, make it low effort, get something out there to start gathering data. The second is make product for your audience, specifically your core audience, the one you know, the one you have qualitative and quantitative data on. Focus on them first. And leverage your strengths. And last, listen to your customers through the many ways and channels they have to communicate with you indirectly and directly. So my first example, this is not an example of testing small, this is an example of doing the opposite, which did not work. One of the challenges of the original release of our online learning platform, Family Handyman, My DIY University, was that it took a waterfall or build-it-all approach. An entire school of content was created, a site developed to support that content, and it was launched in its entirety and marketed. However, the assumptions at the time led to content that didn't really resonate well with our core audience. So what could testing small look like? This can be driving traffic to a landing page and watching the initial click-through rate from wherever you're driving traffic and engagement on the page just to gauge interest in an idea. This could be setting up an affiliate deal, testing a partner's product to your audience before figuring out if you want to go in yourself or even continue with it. This can be utilizing external platforms that allow for rapid and inexpensive launches like Shopify, which is my friend right now, and licensing content to test your audience before putting the work in to develop content yourself. And this is one of the things we did in the case of my DIY university, where we licensed course content that we were unsure if would resonate with our audience to be able to test it. So, make product for your audience. This might be better labeled make product for your core audience, because we all have different audiences, right? The people that are on Facebook viewing your quick tip video are not necessarily the same people clicking in your promotional newsletters. And email is a great sales channel. So for Family Handyman DIY University, the core high-value audience, they were not beginners. So we sent out new surveys and we found that to our email list and found that 90% of our respondents said that they were intermediate or advanced in their skills, yet we had beginner content. So instead of this beginner content, we created a differentiated pricing model. We launched what we now call premium workshops. Now these are super in-depth, 5 to 6 week long online workshops, as close as you can get to an in-person experience, but online, where we had instructors giving one-on-one support to answer those personal project-specific questions to our students. And instead of discarding the original course content, we repositioned it as quick classes. So now we had both selling through our site. So what did this give us? Along with more market research, we now had essentially a live testing of benefits and plus a licensing content model that allowed us to test new topics with minimal upfront development costs and actually get them to market faster. So the results. We went from selling $25 beginner classes to selling $150 premium workshops. This increased our site average order value by 485%, and we did not see a reduction in site transactions. Premium workshops increased the on-site class engagement time by 210%. So now it's not uncommon to see students spending 5 hours on our site in a class per session. And a really interesting learning, one of the things that I did not expect, is we learned that those purchasing these premium $150 workshops and these quick classes weren't necessarily different people. They were highly skilled in some areas, lesser skilled in others. And we know this because we were able to watch the purchasing behavior and the cart checkouts. Leveraging your strengths. Of the different direct-to-consumer product that we've developed, we've seen the easiest, and no, none of this is easy, but we've seen the easiest when there is a natural integration with existing editorial channels. So if you have a strong brand, build a product for that audience and make it readily available in the channels that the audience is used to engaging with your brand content. It's essentially leveraging your brand strength, leveraging your traffic, and leveraging existing trust. We do know that our brand's editorial content online and in our newsletters is able to sell product. We learned this in part from the success of our affiliate e-commerce efforts, where we were driving traffic to other retailers, Amazon, and audiences visiting our brand websites, reading our online posts. They trusted our opinions and suggestions. So this learning, paired with other research we were doing internal, contributed to 2 new products. One, mentioned the branded Taste of Home cookware, which is currently in development, figuring that out. And the second are the downloadable project plans recently launched on familyhandyman.com. And last, listening to the customers is so important. So we found that this is not just watching click habits, although we should be watching that also. It's also listening to the customers, learning their pain points, and learning what makes them proud. And so I'm going to walk through a few examples of what we were hearing from our customers. As mentioned, we recently launched a membership program called Family Handyman Insider. And during the R&D phase, we launched some conjoint analysis to be able to better understand the strength of standalone benefits and groups of benefits. Well, through this analysis, we learned that both internal and external audiences, those familiar with our brand and those that had no idea who we were, ranked project plans very high. It scored very high on both. So, and project plans are how to build something step-by-step materials list. We also know that our loyal followers, unsolicited, would send our editors emails, pictures, stories of the projects they built using our content. It's like, hey, look at my workbench. I did this from your site. We were able to see the interaction, and this is really, it's really interesting. One of my favorite parts, we're able to see the interaction between students and instructors on DIY University, where they are in conversation and talking about what projects they're working on now, what they had challenges with, and what they're going to work on next, essentially laying out our roadmap for us. We also know from customer service reports, because customers complaining is one of the best source of insights. I love it when they complain. That people were searching through back magazine issues for a project that they saw 5 years ago that they wanted to do now and couldn't find and wanted us to find it for them. And last, we had site data showing visitors on familyhandyman.com were clicking the print button and our social share icons to print out these buildable projects. So in so many ways, through so many channels, our customers or potential customers were saying, hey, we have a problem and we want a solution. So in late April 2019, not even 2 months ago, we launched downloadable project plans as a test. These are PDFs. Only 29 pages. That was our test. So small, so simple. On familyhandyman.com, we placed Shopify Buy Now buttons for visitors to be able to purchase, download, and print these PDFs while keeping the experience on site, and that was very important to have it on site. It took a few weeks only of development work, which is amazing if anyone's in the product side, to set up Shopify and integrate with WordPress. We used existing magazine content, disaggregated, resaved as PDFs. We really, really went with the super simple MMP, MVP approach here, just to get the test out. These 29 pages, no additional marketing effort, monetizing existing traffic on an existing site with existing content yielded 550 orders in 4 weeks. It was found money, and it was a great initial test that we considered a success. So now we have plans to roll out additional plans. Now, I said we launched 29. I think there's 2,000 that exist on the site now that we can launch. And are considering the next phase of this product. What should the next phase in this life cycle of this product be? And how do we grow this product? So it's launch, learn, iterate. And it's a 2-for-1, because in our new Insider membership program, these same downloadables are a primary benefit. And so closing remark, real quick. It is easier to build new product for an audience you know, one that's giving you data, that's telling you what they want, than to build audience for a new product. So if you're not used to this, start with the first, test it, refine it, find success, or hire people that know how to do this, and then expand it to the latter. That was it.
Stephanie, thank you very much. We're hold your questions, because Stephanie's going to be joined right now by our panel that's going to talk more broadly about direct to consumer revenue. Steph, stay right. Oh, okay. You want to get your notes? Nina, you can go up, and Tobias, come on up. So how do you get more deeply into the limited media budgets, as we're discovering increasing limited media budgets of our consumers through product development like this, as well as various subscriber services? That's the topic we want to take up now. Interestingly enough, leading this discussion is our own Nina Lentini, who is the editor of events and research content here at MediaPost, because she's involved actually in our own project of product development, of taking a lot of the content from our own events like these and turning and being part of a larger membership service that will that has a library already of over 100 case studies that she's written off of a lot of this event content. Nina has been with us for a number of years, was the editor of Media News Daily, and has been covering the digital marketing and media and advertising field for a number of years. Please welcome Nina, Tobias, and Stephanie.
Thank you. I know many, if not most of you, are pretty worried about subscriptions and what has happened to those people who used to subscribe or do subscribe, and where are they going to go if they go. And also, churn is high up on your list of things that keep you up at night. So I'm happy to tell you that these two have found the Holy Grail.
Nina's not.
They know how they know how to keep retaining subscribers, and also they're signing up more. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Okay, today they're going to talk about subscriptions and whether they have a future, and if they don't, what is taking their place. I know Tobias has some really good insights here, and so we'll start off with him. He is Tobias Bennett, the VP of Revenue and Partnership at Local Media Consortium. Tobias?
Hi, Nina. Thank you. I don't know that I have good ideas.
Micro payments?
Well, yes. So, but let's start at the beginning, I think,
Okay.
to talk a little bit about why I think it's going to go where I think it's going to go.
Okay.
I'm going to do some math right now. This is going to be a really exciting way to get things started, so much so that I had to write it down. But let's start with a little basic math to establish a couple of things. Right? So we've got roughly 200 million U.S. households, all right? If 50% of those sign up for 2 new subscriptions a year at $9.99 a month, which is, I think we'll all admit, a wildly optimistic number, that translates to about $23 billion a year in revenue. Now, speaking from the newspaper industry specifically, in 2000 and 2005, those were the 2 high water years for revenue total in that industry. About $60 billion, roughly, in advertising and circulation revenue. 48.5 of that came from advertising, 11.5 of that came from circulation. In 2017, the advertising revenue was estimated at $16.5 billion. This is all from Pew. You can look it up and double check me if you'd like. And the circ revenue came in at around 11.2. So the best case scenario is subs generating $23 billion a year, and advertising will be optimistic and use the 2017 number of 16.6. That gets us to $39.6 billion, which is $20 billion below the high water marks that we ever saw. So you can look at the advertising piece and be really depressed, obviously, but if you look at the circ piece, things have been steady. Between 1998 and now, circulation revenue for newspapers across the whole country have been between $10 billion and $11.5 billion. So this screaming of we're all dying and it's subscription's fault and fixing that can save us, I think that's kind of a misnomer when you dig into those annual numbers. So the reason I say I see optimism, and the place I see optimism is in some of the changing behavior that we can see in folks here in the U.S., and that's that, I guess it depends on how you look at it, but the relationship with news used to be something that was a very personal, local relationship. I grew up in Boston. The most present piece of branding my whole entire childhood was the Boston Globe. It was in every classroom. It was on every billboard, every street corner. That's gone from people's way of growing up, and their relationship with information and news has become, like a lot of our whole entire culture, really transactional. And so to count on these long-term relationships, I think, is maybe, while well-intentioned, maybe not thought out completely. And so long way to get to. I see a lot of promise in some emerging techs that are focusing on micropayments, different ways to get people to engage with publication in a transactional way. There's a few we can talk about in detail, but they are essentially hooking up to your Amazon wallet, your Google wallet, whatever it is that is your ubiquitous I pay for everything on the internet wallet, and trying to get to a place where we can charge on a story by story or feature by feature way a number that people are going to be willing to pay. So there is optimism there. Traditional approaches to subscription and thinking about it the way that we have always done, I think is, while well-intentioned, maybe not the best use of everybody's time, because that number has been so steady for so long.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think those micropayments, it kind of hurts when you're reading something and then you might have to pay. But on the other hand, how are these people going to stay in business? I mean,
Absolutely.
So I think readers have got to start to understand that. And I don't know, how do you get them to understand? You have any thoughts on that, Stephanie?
Oh, I was actually going back to the initial question. I take a different approach where we have these readers, they're engaged with our magazine, we have information on them. I try to figure out what else we can create for them. So with our new membership program, it's not gated content. Actually, we don't have gated content. We created unique benefits within the membership program, unique and existing. One of the things is magazine access, so both online and in print. So within the membership program, you get magazine access online and print. You get online learning. You get downloadable project plans. You get a custom portal built for just members. And so our hope is that we can then upsell and downsell them through their life cycle to not lose them. So maybe they would not be interested in just the magazine anymore. Can we upsell them to this membership program, which has these other benefits? Or maybe if they've gotten to the end of their life in the membership program, can we save them before they cancel and downgrade them to something that's maybe just access to these project plans?
What are your thoughts on that, Tobias?
My thoughts on it are really smart, and I at times wish that I came up in an industry that was a little different than newspaper, because they do that in magazines in particular. You have these niche audiences, and we're trying to, in our world, and we have a lot of broadcast members in our world as well. We're trying to cater to much more generalized audiences. And I think there are successes individually here and there. Some of my companies are in major metro markets, and they have done really good jobs in creating communities around their local sports teams. One of them is in the room. I don't know if Eric's here right now, but the folks at Belo have done an incredible job of capitalizing on their Dallas Cowboys audience, and it is a very, very meaningful effort for them. But those opportunities, I think, are not so ubiquitous across the whole entire newspaper and broadcast world. So I agree with you 100%, but selfishly, I don't know that it solves all the things I need to try and solve in my world.
Yeah, it is quite the conundrum here. Let's see, I lost my train of thought here. Now, you are also a photographer, right, Stephanie?
On the side. Yeah, not professionally in any way, shape, or form. I started my career as a graphic designer in the magazine business for a B2B restaurant magazine, and went into book publishing and then back into magazines and then into digital. So.
But you don't monetize that at all?
I do not monetize that
Okay.
anymore.
All right. I thought the photographs were very good.
Thank you.
And Tobias, you have a dog,
I do.
and it's a high-maintenance dog. Tell me about that.
Incredibly high maintenance. She cost me about $1,000 a month, but it's great coming home to her. I'm kidding. It's hyperbole.
Okay. All right. So I think at this point we're going to take questions, because we have two trains of thought here, and they're both very valid. And I'm sure you're all looking at both sides of this equation. And I wondered if anybody would like to ask one or both of them some further thoughts. Boy, nobody.
I wanted to follow up with Stephanie on online learning, because it's an area that really fascinates me, and a number of publishers have been getting into it. Can you tell us a little bit about whether you, again, to tie your two of your big points together, online learning and core audience. For your family handyman audience, is this, are you finding any new audience through this, or is this really plumbing and drilling into your existing core?
It's both. So, like I said, we diversified our options online. So we have the quick classes, which are low price, $15, easy barrier, very low barrier to entry. And then our core, we really focus on these high value, $150 premium sessions. We also rolled out a subscription model where you can get access just to all of the quick classes. With free trial, obviously. So the idea is let's get in new people with this beginner content, more than just a one-time sale. Give them access to this recurring revenue solution, and try to grow and nurture them.
How are you distributing it internally? How are you using on your own properties? Are you learning lessons about where and when to advertise your own online learning proposition within your own content?
Yeah. So take a sort of a 360 approach. Obviously, dedicated dedicated promotional newsletters, emails. We're also in our weekly editorial newsletter. I run display ads on our websites. I also, obviously, we have paid media, and even in the print mags. So we really, and editorial content online. So we really try to get at every touch point. With this particular product, which is a little different than how we sell others, we realize when we're selling these courses, the marketing has to be very editorial in nature, which is very different than how we market subscriptions. It's not, hey, you get a free trial, 2 weeks free, save $10. We actually list out, here's exactly what you're gonna walk away with if you take this course, and you're gonna learn these bullet points. And we found that editorial marketing works best for those products because you almost have to explain what the value is to the consumer.
Tobias, I wanted to ask you about micropayments at the local level, especially. Now, for a number of years, local was seen, at least in the industry, there was a lot of hope for that people put a lot of value on their local news, and this was one area where they were willing to pay. Could you tell us a little bit about how the local audiences have evolved in terms of what their willingness is to pay, where and why?
You know what? I have math for that.
Okay.
Hold on, give me a second.
We like math.
Yeah, so this is going to be information from an unnamed member company of mine, but I think it's pretty representative of what's going on out in the space. So this company that will not be named has roughly 50 million monthly uniques, okay? 2.5 million of those 50 million are subscribers. That's about 5% of their total audience. And you know, we hear numbers from the Washington Post and New York Times of 10% of our users are subscribing. I think they are edge cases in the general news world. 75% of the subscriptions that these folks have are bundled with print subscriptions, meaning a lot of these people don't even really know that they have this digital subscription. And only 50% of them ever actually log on. So 1.7% of your total monthly uniques are ever actually logged in general across a lot of these companies. And they're seeing roughly a 13-month churn. So that's where I think a lot of the nervousness comes in. I agree with you that there was a time where local news was in a place to have and capitalize on that relationship. But given the way things have gone economically, a lot of the moves towards centralization, a lot of the takeovers by hedge funds and things like that have taken place, they're gutting a lot of these newsrooms. And so the coverage in the individual communities where you could have these incredible relationships, the thing that would build those relationships is becoming fewer and farther between. They're relying a whole lot more on AP and things like that. So it's a multi-pronged challenge to maintain that relationship in the local communities. And I don't know that at this point anybody's found that, you know, secret sauce to doing it, except for a couple of places where a couple of billionaires have stepped up and said, my community absolutely needs this, and I don't care if it's going to lose money for me, I've got plenty. And they're able to kind of keep up their end of the bargain with that.
I think one of those examples would be the Day of New London.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You're also running into competition, I think, from a number of startups that are now starting to get traction. I mean, suddenly Patch, which we thought was long dead, is suddenly coming back into the market and having a presence. There's another one called, I think, is it Nextdoor Digital, which is sort of a social forum, a community forum for neighborhoods.
Absolutely. It's how I got to know my neighborhood.
So how are you thinking about how you take the lessons from those and absorb them
Absolutely.
and bring those into your business model.
So we've had folks, we do 2 conferences a year. I'll sell a little bit of what the LMC does, but we're kind of a best practices sharing organization for 90 different media companies, 3,000 different properties across the country. We bring our membership together twice a year, and the idea is to find these groups and these folks who are doing things the right way. Patch is actually about to be a member of ours, and we've had them at our conferences in the past to talk about how they're doing, what they're doing. But their DNA is so different. It's more, they're coming there to be an aspirational, like a vision of, if we can get our house in order and we can truly make this digital transition, here's what we could possibly be capable of doing and how we could be operating. So yeah, there are successes out there, but they don't have legacy cost structures attached to them, and that is a real, very, very real consideration in our world.
I'm curious about live and events, because I've talked to some, and for both of you actually, because it seems like you're able to tap into an energy, in your case, Tobias, that local energy where there could be, and I've heard some newspaper chains that are actually moving towards using live events and cultivating live events to become a part of a presence in the neighborhood, but also the kind of energy that comes from online learning could be flipped into event strategies. Are either of you moving in that direction where you're trying to sort of move into live interactions with consumers?
It's certainly conversation we're having, especially as part of the membership program. One of the things we learned, members want to feel engaged with your brand. They want to feel like they're contributing. So we are considering what live events could that mean, even on a small scale, where we invite a very select few of our audience members who are VIPs to partake in our maybe editorial or content process or meet with our staff. So it's definitely conversation.
In our world, events have definitely grown as a piece of the revenue picture over the last few years, but I think probably a little different than the kind of events that they have. It's more a focus on community awards, best of type of things like that, that are trying to serve kind of as a community builder, but also as an advertising vehicle, kind of the hybrid model there. But yeah, there's definitely a push towards that. And then we've got some of our broadcast members who are doing really cool things. I know our friend John Conway was on stage a little earlier. RAL, now granted, they have a very unique position as far as a media company goes in the landscape here in the country, kind of dominating a really large section of the state of North Carolina. But they're doing all kinds of cool stuff with high school sports and all kinds of really forward-looking types of opportunities. So it's certainly something that's coming to local media. You know, print companies are a little challenged occasionally when it comes to trying to create live video, but they're putting the effort in, they're making the investments, and they are trying to get there as well.
Stephanie, how's the online learning piece for Family Handyman being extrapolating across other brands, trusted media brands? Because in Family Handyman, I would imagine you've got maybe a freer and more open market there, but as you start moving into something like the Taste of Home brand, then you're going to be facing a lot more competition in the market.
A lot more competition.
Yeah.
There was, when I started, there was a site, Taste of Home Cooking School online, that I ended up shutting down for that reason, mostly because we had to learn how to do it right first before we scaled. And it was too spread out. We needed to pick the audience that we thought had the most potential, figure out how to do it for them first. So ended up shutting Taste of Home Cooking School online, but that was one of the reasons. And it goes back to what you said before. There are so many cooking schools online. If you look at ATC, America's Test Kitchen, if you look at PANA, if you look at Salted TV. Also, there's ones that are funded by individuals because that's just what they want to do, and they have the money to do it. And with a publishing budget, sometimes you just can't compete with that. So now that we have found our legs with Family Handyman, now we're saying, okay, what else can we solve for our audiences? And maybe that is even Reader's Digest. We know that they are very excited about writing, and we know they're very excited about publishing. So is there a segment of that audience, and is it large enough that we can give them learning that helps them grow that part of their life?
Anything else? I can ask questions forever on this stuff, but anybody else have a question before we wrap? Nina, Tobias, Stephanie, thank you very much.
You got it.
So let me ask Andy and Noah, come on up and join me. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Hey, folks. Julie McCoy here, your cruise director. Anybody hey, someone laughed. Somebody got that joke. The old guy in the room laughed. Yes, Nick. Thank you. Thank you. Well, at least
Who does that make me?
nope. Captain Steubing. That's right. I had the mushrooms at lunch, just so you know, or at the break. What am I doing? Okay, back behind you, our water station sponsor for the 3 days is PlayBuzz, and we're going to be giving away 3 $100 gift cards to be used here at the resort, anywhere you want, over the next couple of days. We'll announce when we'll be doing the drawing, but in your travels, if you want to drop your business card in the fishbowl back there, we'll be doing a nice little giveaway here. You can do a spa, you can do T-shirt, or golf shirts, you can do whatever. So just a quick plug for those guys, and it's in the back of the room. And stay tuned for when we'll do the drawing. Okay, Steve.
We're going to talk about one of the bugbears of digital, which is distribution, which has always been, of course, as I started by saying, it is the story that I've been writing now for 25 years, is the ways in which digital essentially dislocated media as we've known it from its context and from its control of distribution and experience. And that's really, you know, when the history of this is written in 20, 30 years, that will be where it started, was the dislocation of and the untethering of media from its context and even from circumstance. And so understanding where we are in that process of rethinking, always rethinking distribution, as of course those major channels are always in a constant state of motion, responding to themselves, to industry pressures, to news events, to their own revenue streams, is what we want to talk about here, and especially how two very different companies are coming at distribution. Let me ask Noah and Andy to introduce themselves. And in doing, outline very quickly how what your distribution plan is for your. In your case, no, it's multiple brands, but just very quickly outline what your main distribution channels are.
Sure. I'm Noah. I'm SVP of Strategic Growth and Insights at Group 9 Media. We're a newly formed holding company we've been around for about 2.5 years. We have 4 brands that we primarily focus on: Thrillist, The Dodo, Now This News, and Seeker. And we have distribution across O&O, so you know our websites, email, direct touch points with audiences. We are very active on all the major social platforms, so the big 5 as we refer to them: Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. And then we do a lot of syndication and licensing of our content to about 20 to 25 platforms. The Oaths of the world, Amazon, ByteDance, you know, a few things that we've heard before. And we also attack a lot of emerging platforms, which I know we'll get into later, things like TikTok.
Okay. Go ahead, Andy.
I'm Andy Sullivan from Al Jazeera. I oversee our digital content distribution and monetization partnerships. Al Jazeera is a global news organization. We're headquartered in Qatar. We have kind of our legacy business, which is 3 24-hour news networks that broadcast globally. And then digitally, we've got our 2 major platforms, which are Al Jazeera English and Al Jazeera Arabic, but we also have a digital first brand called AJ Plus, which is in English, Arabic, French, and Spanish. Our digital distribution is kind of all across the board. You know, we've got our apps and our websites, which we rely on heavily, but we also rely very heavily on the social media platforms for a lot of our traffic. You know, we do dabble in the Google News, Yahoo, Apple, Flipboards of the world, but really we see the bulk of our digital traffic coming from social media. So that's really where we're investing a lot of our time and efforts.
Not search?
No, I mean, search is definitely big, but we're not, you know, we probably don't have the right, we haven't put a lot of time into our websites and our apps. And that's something that's changing now. So we spent probably the last 3 years really focusing on social media distribution because of the reach that it had, probably sacrificing engagement because of that. So we're really now trying to invest in bulking up our websites for more search traffic.
How about search for you? Because one of the things that I saw a couple of years ago in response to Facebook radically reorienting its algorithms away from publishers' content was a flight to search and a much greater reliance on search as a response.
Sure. So for us, our biggest O&O is Thrillist, and about 2 years ago, I would say about 60% of our traffic was coming from social, and that's flipped to about 60% is coming from search today. So we've made a very big concerted effort to make sure that we're continuing to drive, audience and scale our O&O, and particularly for local. That kind of content has played really well in the search algorithms versus, a lot of the social platforms are built for shareability and content that has to work at scale and nationally. So for Thrillist in particular, we've seen huge growth on the search side. And then when it comes to our other brands, we're just starting to focus on O&O growth, similar to what Andy was saying here. And we have some good early signs that search is going to be really important to that.
What have been the major shifts for both of you? What have been the major changes over the last year in terms of where you're acquiring new customers?
Go ahead. Sure. Yeah. So as I said, for O&O, search has definitely taken the lion's share away from social. For
all SEO, by the way, or are you doing SEM?
Mostly SEO. I'd say
Okay.
99%
Okay.
SEO and AMP as well as part of that.
Right.
On the social side, because we have 4 brands that are pretty distinct, our focus the last year or two has really been diversifying audiences. So, Seeker really grew up on YouTube. They have a heavy audience on YouTube. How do we expand them into places like Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram? The Dodo and Now This grew up when Facebook video was taking off, and they have huge scale there. So how do we reduce the reliance on that platform? So we've also seen a big shift trying to just diversify audiences, utilize our content across platforms much more than just building specifically for one environment. And then on the syndication side, because we've built a bigger and bigger library of IP and scalable content and episodic content, we've seen a lot of success with just the ability to distribute to more platforms through syndication.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that we're seeing a really big shift away from Facebook and into YouTube and Instagram. Our AJ Plus brand, which is digital first, made its name and its bread and butter creating viral videos, news-based viral videos on Facebook. But now they've dedicated most of their resources to YouTube because they're finding that they can get more engagement with users. Yes, they're not reaching tens of millions of users with every single video, but they're getting more interaction with it, they're getting more view time with it, and that's something that we're valuing more these days as opposed to a couple of years ago. And I think one of the things that Noah hit on is kind of cross-platform distribution and really not making anything bespoke for a single platform. And that's something that I think that we've all made mistakes on in the past and kind of pigeonholed ourselves into a single platform. And now when we look at video production especially, we're looking to produce that in all formats so that it can run anywhere. And then if there's a particular platform that takes off, we can move resources into that. But 90% of our video production now is cross-platform.
So you're actually anticipating my next question, which is what we've learned over the last few years and how you've adjusted to this world where we've seen the major platforms sort of dangle out even some high-priced incentives to content providers to develop and help them develop a new platform like a Facebook Watch or even some of YouTube's channels. And I'm curious what we've learned and how your relationships have changed to the platforms as a result of all of this over the last couple of years.
You know, I think even the platforms, when you speak to them now as opposed to a couple of years ago when they wanted exclusive content, they're telling us, especially as a news organization, to diversify. And I think that that's them really hedging their bets against the fake news epidemic and things like that because they don't want to wade into it. They would rather us not be as dependent on those platforms. So when we're looking at things now, we're not looking at, how many views we can get on Facebook and how many shares and likes. We're looking at really that view time and engagement time and which platforms can give us that as opposed to that pure reach.
Mm-hmm. I'd say it's pretty similar for us. We've definitely shifted a lot of our KPIs to higher engagement time spent over the last 2 years, which has naturally shifted some of our focus areas to places like YouTube. Thinking specifically to kind of some of the new offerings that some of these platforms have had, something like Facebook Watch. We certainly aren't afraid to participate in those things, but if it's going to be for exclusive content, we obviously want to have some sort of upfront guarantee so we can get licensing revenue. Otherwise, we really want to build content that we can have live in multiple places. We can own the IP. So we still have really strong relationships with a lot of platforms. We still get a lot of scale on certain platforms, but we're not as focused on just specifically building for a new product if it's only going to live in that space.
So in addition to the platforms recognizing, look, diversify your revenue, don't depend on us. Are they also recognizing and dealing with you these KPIs of engagement, that you're going after something different from traffic now?
Definitely. I think, again, Facebook Watch is a good example. The way that they were valuing, shows that they were investing in, things that they were picking up was a lot less the kind of the top scale vanity metrics of the 3-second views. They wanted loyalty. They wanted people who could build episodic shows that they could keep coming back to, people who were willing to market to these things. You could see it with the shows that they themselves are pushing, very heavily, the Steph Curry shows and Tom Brady. They want kind of tune in, really active viewing and not necessarily passive. So in some sense, I think that they've kind of adjusted to understanding what we as publishers are pushing for. Again, it depends on the exact use case. Instagram's a great example where there is not a clear path to monetization outside of working with an advertiser and branded content and native advertising. So Instagram still understands its place right now is providing scale for reach on those kind of campaigns. So it's a little bit case by case there, but I think even something like a Snapchat, they're more and more focused on time spent, retention, building shows that can have individual subscriber bases as opposed to just kind of top level scale of views.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Definitely,
Yeah,
I just
go ahead.
wanted to mention kind of Facebook is really pushing conversation around video. They are pushing watch parties. They're pushing groups. They don't just want one video to come out, people comment on it and go away. They want to create conversation around things, which we think is great going forward as we look to create new content. We want to create groups around that content, whether it be a series on the environment or a series on food. We're starting to set up Facebook groups around those things, set up more kind of anticipation for new episodes, more discussion around those episodes that we're moderating within those groups. And we've found, it's very early in it, but we've found it very successful.
Are any of them yet, I'm not sure this would apply to Al Jazeera yet, but I think it would apply to some of your brands. Are any of the social platforms amenable to the affiliate revenue, and you trying to leverage their platform to increase your e-commerce? Because we've seen, I think actually Bonnie and I are going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, that there are some of the platforms that are actually devaluing some e-commerce attached content.
Sure. So we are this year we've actually put a big effort back into commerce and affiliate, and we are finding that we can successfully, move audience through the purchase funnel out of places like, Facebook or YouTube. Instagram is just, really heavily investing in a lot of commerce, shoppability, not necessarily for publishers in day one, but they have indicated that's where they're hoping that moves. So I don't know that every platform is fully looking for you to push people off platform and monetize without their ability to kind of participate, but YouTube's a great example where there's a lot of videos or opportunities for product placement. You can have shoppable links in descriptions, and we haven't found that they've penalized us as long as we're making content where people are engaging on the platform itself.
Are you doing any of this?
No.
No, okay.
People don't really want to buy the stuff that's in our videos.
But, right, that's right. But you feel that Instagram is actually kind of giving you a roadmap where you can see more clearly where this is going to lead. That we know that they already are starting to play with a shopping component, and this could translate to the publishers that work with them.
Definitely. Yeah, I think Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, there's clear paths there. I think it's a little bit different with Snapchat because it is a little bit more of a closed-off ecosystem for publishers, but again, they have a lot of advertisers that swipe up to app installs, and so I don't think it's a crazy thing that we'll see in the future that there'll be ability to drive affiliate through Snapchat. Twitter, I think, is a little bit more difficult because it's such a heavy news environment that I don't know that that's their focus is around affiliate per se, but we'll see.
Before I want to drill into some examples in a second, but before we do, I need to at least make a nod to my own Too Cute by Halves title for this of Apple Minus. The Apple Plus platform sort of comes in, it imported the texture business that Apple bought and brought with it that notion that we'll do genuine rev share on membership. I don't know if either of you, I didn't even ask you guys, either of you are in Apple Plus, but what do you think of the model?
Apple's one of the low-hanging fruits that we haven't quite picked yet. I think there's a huge opportunity in it. We have a kind of an install base there already with just basic RSS feeds that's in the millions that we can leverage at any time. So we're looking to do that, and we're looking at Apple Plus as well. From our perspective, I look at Apple Plus and I see it as something a little bit more geared towards traditional print publishers and less video publishers. You know, as we're trying to get out there and push more video, because we do have, you know, a plethora of video content, it doesn't seem to be as natural as a platform as IGTV or something else. So we're kind of taking a wait-and-see approach on some of that.
We're pretty similar. The only thing I kind of would add is that, you know, the amount of people that have an iPhone in their hand every day, we do feel that Apple, if they ever figure out or crack a specific nut for monetization, they have such a large user base that it is a place that a lot of publishers are going to have to play in and understand. Whether or not Apple Plus is specifically the kind of the best way to monetize moving forward, I'm not really sure, because I think it's a little bit more top of the funnel right now of just, they just have so many users. If they can push people into one of these environments, it can be a good top of funnel play. But I'm a little bit skeptical as far as them kind of really having a real subscription business that helps publishers.
Yeah, all the other platforms have a long reputation of having screwed everybody over. Apple's case is we just kind of are complacent when it comes to media.
It's a wait and screw.
Yeah, it's a wait and screw. Eventually we're going to get around to screwing you. We haven't thought about it hard enough yet to figure out how. Let's talk about some hard examples. Andy, give us an example of a distribution program from where, and the KPIs that you attach to it that have worked especially well, especially, you know, in through monetization.
Sure. I think that we're a very immature organization as far as digital monetization is concerned. Al Jazeera gets its money from a grant from the Qatari government, so we haven't always had to make money, but what we found is that when we make money, platforms like us more. They give us more opportunities, and then we can also fund our innovation a little bit better with it. So I don't have any great examples, but going forward, we are producing more episodic shows that are geared towards a real 360 experience with monetization as the forefront. One of the ones we're producing that's coming out in the fall is a show called Fork the System, which is a little bit off-brand for us because it's not hard news. It's going into various countries and seeing how food can be affected by geopolitical influences. You know, how hummus is different in Israel than it is in the Middle East, and why that is. So things like that. And what we're looking to do is really create a 360 experience around it that you know, tells users about it on Facebook, drives them into YouTube for full episodes, has supplementary content on IGTV, drives back to Facebook for a conversation. So it lends well to sponsorship. So we've already started engaging our sponsors that we talk to regularly, but we're also talking to the platforms as well to see if they want to go, you know, kind of co-present this in market. And we've gotten some good feedback on it. So we're very bullish on it, but again, we're extremely immature as far as the monetization.
So you're thinking of and want to play with their sales teams?
Yeah,
rather than against
I think,
it, or
and,
simply
you know,
go direct yourself.
We don't have a huge sales team. We have one salesperson in the United States. So it's something where if we want to tap into that market, we need to use partners for that, and they're becoming more amenable to those things.
Now, knowing Group 9, you guys have a multitude of brands. So tell us a little bit about how the distribution strategies vary. Brands with very different audiences in some cases. How the distribution, give us a couple of examples of how the distribution strategy really varies from brand to brand.
Sure. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, each of the brands has a little bit of a different kind of ethos from where they began. So Seeker was a YouTube-first science channel, very hardcore science audience. YouTube plays really well for that type of content. You can get a lot deeper engagement. You can have a lot more time spent on, you know, any individual video or topic. So they started there. Now This and Dodo came up in kind of that revolution of sort of where AJ Plus came out of, the quick turn videos for Facebook. They were two of the early Discover channels on Snapchat, and they were fully kind of in that distributed high scale environment. And Thrillist was actually birthed about 15 years ago out of an email newsletter. So their background is very much email, O&O, local content, local distribution. So when we formed Group 9 about 2.5 years ago, we definitely have had some learnings where I'd say the first year or so, we really thought that we would see the kind of best in class for each of these brands in their areas would, rise, all tides would rise. And we ended up kind of moving a little bit off the mark for where the brands really excelled when we were trying to say, Now This and Dodo have massive scale on Snapchat. We need to get Thrillist and Seeker on there. They need to build scale there really quickly. We have huge audiences. We're selling into them. We have a lot of success in the ad sales market against those channels. And the last year and a half, I think we learned a lot that wasn't necessarily the best way forward. The editorial teams are individual and structured differently, and the distribution strategy should be really leaning into what they do well. Of course, we can pair learnings and spread learnings really quickly. We can negotiate together against the platforms. We can do ad sales deals that go across the brand. So there's definitely advantages to working really closely together. But from a distribution perspective, it makes a lot more sense for Seeker to focus on mid-form shows and licensing that content to Amazon and building it first for YouTube than trying to build an O&O when one doesn't exist. And it's going to take a lot of resources. It took 15 years of investment for Thrillist to get to that space. Same thing with Now This and Now This is a great example. They are just getting into YouTube. We're just starting to invest in O&O because it makes a lot of sense for the news space, but they're continuing to pour fuel on the fire where they have a lot of success with Facebook, with Instagram, with Twitter, where news is a really great place to play, versus Thrillist, where Twitter isn't really a really great environment for them. Long-winded way of saying, I think we have a pretty specific approach for each brand, and we try and pass learnings across the board, but we're not trying to force everybody to be on every single platform.
Well, then how do you organize that internally? What are the shared resources and what are the ones that are pushed out towards the individual brands?
Sure. So we have the team that I sit on. We're a central insights team, and we all came from one of the brands. So a lot of us came from Thrillist, a lot of us came from Now This. We had been running our own various audience development teams or research teams or insights teams or data and analytics, and we just realized that there was a lot of overlap in work when it came to data infrastructure. We have 130,000 minutes of consumption in a given day that we can be analyzing across all these platforms, across all these brands. So we strategically centralized the insights, the data, and the analytics, but we still have on the ground audience development people that are taking the strategies we're putting together and operationalizing them. And then we have all our content creators still and editorial teams focused specifically on their brands. Mm-hmm. And then we've centralized pretty much everything else. So sales is centralized. However, we do have sellers who are more focused on maybe a regional account in Detroit that has a lot more success with Thrillist. We centralized HR, we centralized finance, we centralized our studios and licensing business, but we've really focused on keeping specifically the editorial, content creation, and day-to-day optimization at the brand level.
Who has the connection to the platform itself? Where does that live?
So the way that we've structured the relationships just kind of happened organically over time. We generally have one person who is the lead, and it could be, for instance, with Snapchat.
By platform or by brand?
By platform.
By platform. Okay.
So take Snapchat, for instance, we've had a very long-standing relationship with Snapchat with the Dodo. They've had a really great channel and have now many channels and curated and shows. And so the president of the Dodo actually owns the relationship across the entire company with Snapchat. And then we have someone on our team, one or two people will own the day-to-day. If there's a new tool or something that we want to be testing, we'll work with the brands to kind of roll that out. And then the brands can just focus on the editorial teams can just focus on the content. They don't have to worry about what does Facebook want us to do today. We'll have kind of one person at the top oversee the strategic relationship and a couple people operationalize it.
So you have internal experts who essentially are expert on a channel.
Yes.
And so they can then better judge and inform which brands really are appropriate here in what form.
Sure. And when new things come up, something like IGTV, we have our top person who is getting information that it's coming, understands what kind of Instagram is looking to see. We have our experts on our team who are Instagram experts who understand, this could make a lot of sense for Seeker. They're doing a tabletop science show that would play really well for teenagers. It seems like that's the kind of thing that may work in IGTV. Let's start to test it and get it out the door.
Andy, how are you organizing this?
Yeah, I mean,
internally?
it's similar to what Noah was talking about. We have a centralized organization that really is in charge of the communication, monetization, strategy around how we're approaching all of our distribution partners. And then we have the individual brands who are creating content for those partners, doing audience development, really understanding how they can utilize the platforms. So, you know, at any given time, we've probably got 9 or 10 different teams creating content for social media. And historically, they were all speaking individually to these companies. So we'd have 8 different people talking to Facebook and whatever it might be. And those organizations started to see us as a bunch of smaller media organizations with 10 to 15 million followers, as opposed to a global news organization with 100 million followers. So that's why we centralize things, and we think that we can take advantage of opportunities better as an entire group than as individuals. But at the end of the day, the individuals that are creating the content that are close to the users understand how to engage those users much better than we do in kind of a centralized organization. So we don't want to be a stopgap for communication. We want to facilitate communication on an editorial level, but take away or kind of ease their burden on that strategic level, the monetization level, the new opportunity level, and centralize that so we can send things out across the organization.
I want to talk about a persistent problem in this distributed age, and that's converting into into brand loyalists and direct traffic, because that became a priority as we started seeing the social platforms jiggle their algorithms. One of the other themes was generate and grow your direct audience, but one of the challenges with social traffic especially, and search traffic, has always been it tended to be shallow, is that it was hard to convert. They tended to be one and done. What have we learned about converting this distributed traffic into brand loyalists and direct traffic?
Sure. So it certainly is not easy, to your point. You know, there's probably a few different approaches for us. So the first thing is, especially when we're talking about video content, we're really trying to make content that drives a loyal behavior. So episodic content that you would want to tune in each week, building IP that really has an audience around it, a fan base around. You know, there's several shows we've launched in the last year or two where we are really monitoring that people are coming back, watching multiple episodes that are, you know, there's key metrics we're looking at that we probably didn't look at 2 or 3 years ago. You know, the frequency of how many of a specific series an individual user is watching in a given month. How often a daily active user, you know, what is our daily active user over monthly active user rate looking like, which is a more kind of traditional app metric. So the content itself is something that we're focusing on that will drive a more loyal behavior. And then there are sort of high touch point, but probably low, you know, low scale things. So IRL experiential is definitely something that Thrillist has had a lot of success with that we're just starting to roll out across the other brands. So Dodo's going to have Best Dog Day Ever, which everybody should go to. We'll be touring it around the country. But those are things where it's not going to be millions of people that come out, but we're trying to convert, you know, 1,000 people that come to an event to become really brand advocates.
Conversion of users has been historically a very weak part of our strategy. You know, we were focusing on reach, focusing on getting things out there, focusing on getting things viral, really to spread our content as far as we possibly could. So as we started to bring things back, you know, I talked about we need to update our websites, we need to update our apps to really encourage more return users and more loyalty. But in parallel, editorially, similar to what Noah was talking about, we've changed lengths of video. So we've increased video length from what was normally, you know, 30 to 50 seconds is now 3 to 10 minutes. Which increases engagement. We're creating more episodic content, which is increasing engagement. We're trying to create that conversation around content right now on other platforms, but with an eye to bringing it into our own platform eventually. So it's a work in progress, but it's definitely something that we've got an eye on.
I want to wrap before we go to questions, and I do expect questions. I want to talk about some of the emerging platforms you're playing on, because in our discussions, you guys are experimenting and teasing out some new platforms that I thought were interesting. Andy, you're already trying both VR and smart speakers, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're learning in the smart speaker space?
Sure, good, because I didn't want to talk about VR.
Yeah, all right.
Smart speakers are something we're extremely bullish on, and audio in general is something that we're very bullish on. And back to your last question, we feel that audio is a great way to create loyal users because it's something that they can engage with in the morning, they can engage with on their commute, they can engage with when they come home, and in a very lean-back environment, especially with smart speakers. The issue that we've been having with smart speakers is just a lack of data and a lack of intelligence into how well other publishers are doing on the platforms as well. So it's kind of a little bit of a blind faith right now, but we've had great success with it. And what started out...
What format, by the way? Just give us an example of how you're using it.
So initially we were creating a daily news brief that was distributed on Alexa and on Google Home. And that was one person sitting in the Middle East creating it and distributing it on a daily basis. That's turned into an entire audio organization that's now doing twice daily news briefs for smart speakers, also doing podcasts that are weekly right now, but turning into daily in both Arabic and English, multiple podcasts, and seeing great success. And that team's really looking at that entire audio strategy. And not just smart speakers, but where podcasts fit in and how distributing, a 2-minute news brief that's built for smart speakers, distributing it on a podcast platform and how that works. And these are things that we're all very early in, but again, we're extremely bullish on. And for us, historically kind of a slow-moving media organization, we see it as an opportunity to get out in front of something. So we might not see the numbers today, especially when we're comparing it to other digital distribution channels. It looks tiny and it looks like something that we should be running away from, but it's increasing, and it's increasing those loyal users. So we're optimistic about it.
You're on TikTok. First of all, does everybody know what TikTok is?
Barely.
Just all right. What brief? Give us the brief rundown and tell us how you're using it.
Sure. So it's a short form kind of video distribution, viral, 15 seconds or less. Generally speaking, people are more or less doing very lo-fi things on their phone. They're pairing it with music and then usually trending challenges. So kind of hashtags and things that are trending, and then a lot of people jump on them. You could kind of think of like the Ice Bucket Challenge, had that existed when TikTok was big, would be one of those types of things. We have been diving into that recently the last couple months. So we saw a huge audience there. So they're owned by ByteDance. We've worked with ByteDance historically, and ByteDance is a massive company. They have more employees globally than Facebook. And so we knew that they were pushing this heavily, and they are. And it was the most downloaded app in the US in I think Q4 of last year. So there's a huge audience of teenagers who are starting to download the app. They're using it heavily. For us, that meant we should start to experiment and see what made sense in the platform. So it's definitely early days for us, but we have been experimenting with 3 of our brands, trying to just understand workflow, get a kind of an early indication of how we can play into some of these trends and challenges, understanding what kind of analytics we have, how do we start to grow an audience, and then for us, how do we start to bring brand advertisers into something like this? Because TikTok is, if you use the app, they actually are doing a pretty decent job of getting ad sponsorship. Even today, when you open it, there's a full app takeover. And they've done things recently that have really taken off, like Chipotle had a challenge that they sponsored that got millions and millions of teenagers using it. So for us, we just saw an opportunity. We saw a huge audience around something, and we wanted to get in there, learn, see if there was something that made sense, and try and get ahead of the curve, as Andy was saying. So we're not, in 2 years, if this is something huge, we didn't want to be starting from scratch.
What? Let's see. Questions from the audience.
It's almost lunch.
Okay, I got a lightning round. Let's finish with a lightning round. Very quickly, give me your response to each of these channels and how they are, both these platforms, how they're performing for you and how you're monetizing them, or whether you are monetizing them. Search.
Performing well, big scale, and monetizing through O&O.
Oh, no.
I think performing well. We're monetizing through AMP. I think we see some early success with AMP stories, so we're starting to put more resources towards that.
Facebook. Where are you with Facebook?
Still getting a lot of scale, but not quite where we were when we were more heavily focusing on it. And we've had good success with revenue there.
Yeah, it's necessary for reach and for promotion. I think we're trying to drive people to other platforms where we can monetize better, but we have had some success monetizing there, and we'll continue to make content to monetize there.
Both less success monetizing Facebook than other channels?
We've done pretty well with the mid-roll ad program because we have such scale. The crux of our revenue is still ad sales, branded content, native advertising, and we can seed a lot of that through Facebook for scale. So I think in that sense we've done well, and then we've also actually, we had 5 shows that were licensed by Facebook for Facebook Watch, so we're actually generally pretty happy.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think to segue to your next one, we see probably the most monetization on YouTube. And the most engagement on it because we do have longer view times. We haven't done a ton of watch shows. We probably have 4 or 5 that have been mildly successful, and we haven't really monetized them yet. So I can't speak as well to that, but I think that we see a lot more potential in YouTube monetization.
YouTube?
YouTube, we're just starting to build bigger scale across the org, so the scale from that sense isn't quite huge for us yet. But yeah, the kind of the monetization per viewer per minute spent has been
But
good.
for both of you, monetizing YouTube through direct?
No.
No, you're not. You're
Through
not?
Google sales.
You are really, and you're making money on it.
Yes.
Good for you.
I mean, we're probably making 40
God
cents
bless
on the
you.
dollar, but it's better than 0.
Okay.
For us, we get programmatic from the Google side. We've sold in a bit, but we really think that'll be a big area of growth for us. And then we've had sponsored shows that we've gotten, money that we've run on multiple channels, including YouTube.
Instagram.
Growing scale, particularly stories and IGTV, that we feel really good about, and we're hopeful monetization will come.
You're doing a daily news report on IGTV, right?
No, we're doing, so we do put out kind of recuts. We have a daily show that is part of the Facebook News program on Watch with Now This, and then
Okay.
we'll repurpose some of that for Instagram stories.
Okay, because that's what I'm seeing, I think.
Yeah, I think Instagram's a great platform where the users that we really want to engage with are. So we're investing a lot more into it. Monetization for us right now is 0. But we're looking to create a little bit more of that branded content relationship so that we can monetize it better. And eventually it will plug into the Facebook ad network, so it's just not there yet.
And finally, Snapchat.
We've had pretty good success. We've had very good success with
Well, you were
scale.
you were partnering with him. I mean, you were
Yes.
doing Discover programming.
Yep,
right?
so we've got 3 Discover editions, 2 curated editions. Now this is the only breaking news channel on Snapchat, and I think we have up to maybe 12 shows at this point. So we have a very large scale of audience. We do really well from just like the passive programmatic ad revenue we make there, and we're hopeful that advertisers will start to come in a little bit more heavily for direct sales into the channels.
Do you have any evidence that brand building that you're doing for Now This on Snapchat is translating into YouTube recognition? Or
Not necessarily directly from Snapchat to YouTube. We definitely are seeing our Now This audience can skew. We can get a lot of new audience through Snapchat because it skews so much younger than, say, YouTube or Facebook. So in that sense, I think it is helping building branding in that way. But we're actually revisioning a lot of the shows that we run on YouTube. We're running them separately on Snapchat. We're finding different audiences. We're finding different levels of success depending on kind of the nature of the show. So I think for us, it's just kind of a different audience bucket.
okay. Are you doing Snapchat? at all?
We had some political disagreements with Snapchat, so we're not.
Well, do tell. Do tell.
I don't know. Do you want to get into Middle Eastern politics or? No, we had some great success with Snapchat early. We had basically the first Discover channel in the Middle East, Arabic language, that was doing great, and it was killing it. I mean, like really doing well. But they got pressure from their Saudi investors to shut it down because it's coming from a free voice in the Middle East that isn't necessarily nice to the dictatorial regimes in some of these countries. So they pressured Snapchat and they shut it down. And it was a campaign that we started a campaign after that really about freedom of the press and being able to get our voice out there because it is important. It's a very important voice in the Middle East, especially to people who aren't getting the news content that they necessarily need to get. So long story short, or long story long, we're not investing too heavily in Snapchat right now.
Andy, Noah, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
We're going to break for roundtables now, unless we have any announcements, John? Nope. Okay. So we're going to break for roundtables now. The first one will be diversification as a strategy. Nick Johnson's going to do that one. Where is? In the back corner. Whoop. Oh, I'm sorry. It's right over here. And Nick Johnson's going to be leading that one. Subscription sustainability with Tobias. That's in the back. And Apple Minus on distribution. Noah's going to be leading that one. Back left. So grab a round table.